New York's classic rock, Q1043.
I say good morning to Chad Hartigan. He is the director of Little Fish, and this is a movie whose timing could not absolutely be better. You can see it if there's a theater that's open in your area, but you can more likely rent it on VOD. So this stars Olivia Cooke, who you may have seen in Sound of Metal from Bates Motel, also Jack O'Connell, who was so great in the Angelina Jolie movie Unbroken. Okay, but here's the story because as I said, the timing cannot be better because here we are 11 months into the pandemic, and this is a romantic drama about that's set in a pandemic, if not a pandemic, an epidemic. But what happens in the epidemic in Little Fish is that those who are infected start to lose their memory. Some lose it all at once, some lose it over time. But that's possibly, I mean, in my mind, that's possibly the worst thing that can happen. And I don't know what's worse, losing your own memory and knowing that your memory is going to be lost, or watching the person you love lose their memory. I honestly don't know which is best. So tell us the whole story behind this and how it feels to be opening this movie in at this particular time when we're dealing with a pandemic. It's crazy.
It is crazy because it's based on a short story that was written probably 4 or 5 years ago, and then the screenplay was written 3 or 4 years ago, and we shot it in 2019, and we put the finishing touches on it around February 2020, and then within weeks, word had gotten out that there was this pandemic going around, spreading throughout the entire world, and it was pretty wild to then sort of sit on the film for a while and see all the similarities between our what we thought was science fiction at the time and the real world starting to collide. But yeah, when I first read it, I related to the story because I felt like even at the time that I read it, the news, anytime you turned it on, it was bad news, and the world had a feeling of sort of crumbling around us, or at least it did to me personally. And at the same time, my girlfriend was pregnant with our first child, and I had this intense love in my own home and in my personal life, and the balance of trying to reconcile the highs of my personal life and the love in my home with the doom and gloom of the outside world was what really drew me to it. And now I think even more people can relate to those feelings.
But what were you thinking barely a month later? What was going through your mind of, oh my God, there's a pandemic in this world?
Well, of course, at first, when it was so uncertain how it was all going to play out, the fate of our movie felt like not the biggest concern, especially as people started dying and we weren't sure how contagious it was and all that. But as the months grew on and we did sort of get a handle on how our lives were going to be led, it was strange. It was tough for me to I didn't watch the movie again until July. So from February to July, I just didn't watch it at all. And I was nervous about how I would feel when I did watch it. But then sort of happily, when I watched it in July, it played better for me than it ever had before. And I think that just has to do with how we were smart enough to focus on the romance first and foremost from the beginning, and treat the pandemic as backdrop. And I think that's what regular people do, and what we've all been doing is just trying to take day by day, focus on what's ahead of us and try not to let things that don't directly affect us too much. So in that sense, the movie kind of had a new layer when I watched it again, and I hope that, it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of someone watching it for the very first time in a post-pandemic world. But I hope that it's a cathartic experience for those who do.
So tell us about the baby.
The baby was born during our second week of shooting. I wrapped the day on Friday night at 2 a.m, and I took the 6 a.m. Saturday morning flight to LA from Vancouver and made it to the hospital with an hour to spare. And then my girlfriend gave birth, and spent the whole weekend with her and the baby. But then I had to go right back to set and finish the movie. And so I could only really come back on the weekends. And it was a wild, busy, crazy time for us all. But obviously now this movie also has a very special place in my heart because of the time when I was making it.
And the baby boy, girl, name what?
The baby is a boy named Casper. He's not much of a baby anymore. Now he's almost 2.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's doing great.
And tell us, I'm speaking with Chad Hartigan. He is the director of Little Fish, which just opened and you can see on VOD, and it stars Jack O'Connell of Unbroken fame and also Olivia Cooke, most recently seen in Sound of Metal. And it's basically a love story that's set in the middle of a pandemic where instead of people getting COVID, they start losing their memory either all at once or gradually over time, a horror in and of itself. So what is it like handling a toddler in the middle of a pandemic? What's that been like for you? What's it been like for the grandparents?
Well, it's been really tough on the grandparents because they haven't been able to see him. They live in other states, and because of the travel being restricted, they haven't seen him in a long time. It's sometimes difficult, but I would assume that even raising a toddler in non-pandemic times can be sometimes difficult. And I do think we're lucky to have him at an age where he's still amused by empty cardboard boxes in the house and just running around outside, and we don't have to worry yet about homeschooling and things like that seem like they're the real thorny issues with children and also socializing isn't a huge part of their lives at that age anyway either, so it hasn't been like he's missed out on a lot of that, but who knows, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see the long-term effects that this year or two has on children when they grow up.
Yeah, in terms of socialization and all that and so much more.
Do you have children?
I do. I actually am in the situation with your grandparents because my 2 of my 3 kids live in California. So my 2 grandchildren I haven't seen in a year except for FaceTime. And it's very weird because I'm watching them grow up, but I'm not there to hug them. And they keep saying, I want GMOS pancakes. McDonald's pancakes aren't as good as GMOS pancakes. So it's frustrating, but we're lucky to have FaceTime because if this was another era, we wouldn't even have that. I wanted to ask you, the movie industry, how have you been doing professionally and work-wise in this pandemic?
Well, it's been tough. I think I'm lucky that I had this finished film, or somewhat basically finished film at around the time it started. So that has kept me busy, and also kept me from feeling like I'm falling into oblivion with nothing happening. But I think a lot of us are trying to, or originally trying to get through it by writing and working on scripts, and now production seems to be starting up again. I'm actually personally in no rush to get back out and on a set. Um, and I have the luxury of not needing to rush out and work on a set again anytime soon. But to me, it feels like I'd rather give that a beat and hope that it can return to a little bit more of the normal way of doing things. It's hard for me to imagine it being as fun as it used to be. Like making a movie, there's nothing more fun than being on a set and the camaraderie of everyone. You know, it's often compared to like summer camp, and that's true. So it's hard for me to imagine the same feelings given the new restrictions and how everyone has to, you know, give each other space.
I've been having this discussion with any actor, director, or writer who has joined Sonstein Sunday in the last 11 months. The genie is kind of out of the bottle now when it comes to how the public views movies.
Mhm.
Yes, we would love movie theaters to reopen, but when everybody is safe again, I wonder, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, what is going to happen with the movie industry? Are we mainly going to see people streaming movies or what?
It's a great question. I can speak for myself personally. I can't wait to get back to the movie theater,
But you're
and
a
I have to.
director.
I know, but I have to believe there's a lot of other people like me, and just I hope that people are realizing that maybe they took for granted the experience of watching something with other people and being restricted from using their phone at the same time. All the things that make going to the movies great that people who work in the movies know. I hope that some regular people, once they have had this opportunity taken away from them, sort of are starting to realize that too.
Well, there are
Even before the
certain
pandemic,
movies.
though, it was pretty
Yeah.
clear we were on the path towards certain movies only being in the movie theater and the rest all being streaming, and that's only accelerated. So that seems clearly to be where we're headed. And there's nothing wrong with that. We'll just have to see how it plays out.
It just dawned on me. I mean, there's that whole aspect of movies, how we see them, but there's another aspect which the regular moviegoer doesn't think of, but you and I think of, which is promoting a movie.
Hmm.
Because in the old days, if you wanted to interview somebody, it would generally be at a junket where you're face to face. And now we can do this by Zoom. I can do this with you in LA and me in the New York area. Do you think this is going to change the way we do business in the movie industry moving forward? Because it's certainly cheaper, right, than
Yes.
travel.
Anything that's cheaper probably ends up sticking around. I think it won't be completely shifted to online, because you can't replicate the face to face, the energy of being face to face. And I, for one, absolutely love going out and talking to people and traveling and promoting. Um, and by far the biggest disappointment for me was that this film didn't get to play film festivals, which is usually, in my previous films, that's 6 or 7 months of a year where I just get to go and meet people across the country, across the world, and see how different audiences react to the film. And it's, I only make a film once every 3 or 4 years, so I greatly look forward to that. And it's been devastating to have that taken away. So I think that Leonardo DiCaprio probably gets really tired of continuous interviews, but for the most of the working class film people, it's a great opportunity that comes around once in a while, and we would be sad to see it only turn to online.
I thank you, Chad Hartigan. He is the director of Little Fish, which you can see VOD Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q1043.